Islands right outside of college, and then continued to travel in the tropical areas around the equator, and moved back to the DC area, worked for about 6 years for a nonprofit, and got a master's from Virginia Tech in natural resource management. And then I had a day where I was inspired by the distilling industry, and I really wanted to open a business, and I loved whiskey. So I just said, screw it. I emptied my bank account and jumped off the cliff into business ownership. And now we have a 10th Ward Distilling Company here in Frederick, in my hometown, that has been open for about 4 years. So we are in what used to be considered the 10th Ward of Frederick. That's where we got our name from. We started off as a teeny tiny distillery with just my mom and I helping out on the weekends, all the way to now a staff of 12. We have moved from a 1,600 square foot facility to a 6,000 square foot barrel storage, event space, cocktail bar, the works. So it's been a crazy 4 years, and it's been really super neat, and I'm super excited to have you guys here sharing some of our spirits with us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by, I'll lead you through how to nose and taste a spirit. So if anybody wants to follow along and wants to pour themselves a glass of a spirit they might have on hand, I had a couple of actually fellow Terp alums come visit me today to pick up a bottle, and they brought me a really fun necklace. So shout out to Robin. Thanks for the Terps necklace so I can represent while I'm on the video call. And then I'm going to mix a couple of cocktails. I'm going to show you how to easily mix drinks at home. I'll even go through what types of materials you have in your kitchen that you can use as a substitute for mixing cocktails in your own fancy way. So go ahead and grab a spirit, take your time. I'm going to start with an introduction on glassware. Now I'm holding up two different types of glasses here. This guy's called a rocks glass. If you guys want to get interactive and add in some comments, if anybody knows what the name of this glass is, feel free to type it in. You'll get some brownie points from us here. This is a patented style of glassware that was invented in Scotland by whiskey scientists for the shape of the glass. The bulbous shape here at the bottom is supposed to create the best shape for actually smelling and tasting a spirit, because it can capture the glass here. For those that could not recall the name, it's called the Glencairn glass. There are many whiskey enthusiasts that insist on only nosing and tasting out of this type of glass. There are others that insist that that's all a bunch of promotional types of research that have been created just to get the Scotch industry making money off of Glencairn glasses. So it kind of depends. I personally prefer the rocks glass. I like the way it feels in my hand. When 10th Ward used to carry these, I was also breaking one a week. So these are a little more fragile. This is a little more Monica proof. You're welcome to taste out of either. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to introduce you to something called a spirit flavor wheel. I'm going to pour myself a glass of 10th Ward's Jennifer style gin, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. Steve, I assume everybody can hear me okay?
I believe so.
Awesome. Now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a second so I can show you guys what a flavor wheel looks like here. And if you want to follow along, you're welcome to go to 10thwarddistilling.com/flavor or -flavor wheel, the word wheel, and I have it here on my screen. And you'll want to scroll down. This is how to do an at-home guided tasting experience. But if you scroll down to the flavor wheel, you can click on it to enlarge it, and it'll open up to a larger image here, which I'm showing on my screen. Now, I know this seems like a lot of text. We're going to start by just focusing on the middle. And so we're going to begin by doing something called nosing. Obviously, that means smelling. You don't want to get your nose too far into the glass, but maybe about 4 inches away, and take a smell. Now, the average person doesn't have the most sophisticated sensory when it comes to smelling. And that's what I tell everybody. All of these little items on the outside of the wheel are very specific notes, and it's going to be a little bit challenging to get something out of that just with scent. And so that's why I like to direct you to the middle of the wheel first, because it's going to get you focused on some of the primary types of flavors. Now, this spirit that I'm smelling right now is a gin. It's a Genever style gin. It's a Dutch style gin. So it has a little bit of a whiskey base to it also. So it's almost like if whiskey and gin had a baby together. And so when I smell this, I really get some herbal notes first, especially because there's juniper in it, which is standard for gin. I also get a little bit of cereal. And if we're to zoom in here on the wheel, which we can do, a little bit of breadiness from the grain, maybe even some barley and corn and rye flavors. And then I'm going to scroll down over to the herbal section. First, I'm going to share my video again. Stop sharing so you guys can see me taste. So the next thing what you want to do once you're done smelling it and you're getting familiar with it is you're going to want to taste. Take an initial taste first. I like to tell people you can't judge a spirit off of the first taste. That's because no matter how smooth it might be, it's always going to shock your palate the first time. Thanks for the Rax Glass recommendation. Thank you. And then the next thing you want to do is coat your palate. Start to get those, some people like to chew it or swish it around in your mouth. Start to get it coated onto your tongue so you can begin recognizing some of those different types of flavor profiles. Now, the first time I learned about this type of stuff, a guy at a winery told me, you know, you don't need to know fancy things about tannins and tasting notes. You just need to know what you like. And I've taken that forever since then as a means to really understand and not listen to what people are telling me. But what I love about this flavor wheel is that once you start to get more familiar with this type of stuff, at least you can start to understand what it is that you like and be able to describe it so you know what you want to get next time you go to the store. So when I taste this, we can start to get a little bit further into the herbal and floral section. I definitely get juniper here and those fresh herb notes, also a little bit of vegetal notes. This has chicory root in it. It has juniper, it has lemon peel, elderflower, which gives some sweeter floral notes to it. So when you start to think about things like, okay, it smells floral, but what does that mean? Is it like the type of flowers that I like to smell, like roses? Is it more grassy? Then you might start to think of some hay notes. I get fruit on this. So if you get a little bit of fruit, then you might want to start to think about what types of fruity flavors are you getting? Is it tart? Is it tangy? Or is it more juicy? In our gin, I definitely get some tart tastes, which leads me to the citrus section here. There's actually lemon peel in this Dutch style spirit. Genever is a Dutch style gin. So that can help you start to sort of guide yourself to identifying these types of things. And now we're going to go back to our video here. Any questions on the flavor wheel? If you guys want to type those into the chat, you're welcome to. Oh, I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen when I was doing that. I'm sorry. I was like zooming in on the flavor wheel and talking about it. So the next thing we'll do is we're going to switch to another spirit. So the gin can be pretty simple because it has very specific types of ingredients in it. But what you get from a lot of people are whiskey style spirits that can be harder because they all just taste oaky. Something I recommend as a palate cleanser, which I actually learned from our head distiller when you're switching spirits and in between them, is to actually smell the inside of your armpit, because that's where you smell the most like yourself, and you're not used to, you don't know how your own self smells. So that sort of resets your tasting and your smelling palate. So the next thing I'm going to pour here, I'm going to go ahead and get you guys closer so you can see what I'm pouring, is what we call our Honey Jack. This is a really fun spirit that we are releasing again this Saturday. We only release this twice a year. It's distilled from something called mead. Mead is a wine made from honey. It's fermented honey that we then barrel age into a spirit. And slightly sweetened back with honey. It's something that only a few people in the country are making. It's super unique. It's a lot of fun. We source the mead from a place called Orchid Cellar Meadery and then distill it into a spirit here at 10th Ward. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again so we can see that flavor wheel one more time. So with this guy, when you're drinking it, I guess when you're smelling it, the first thing you're going to get is that sweetness. And it smells immediately like honey here for me. On the nose, some floral notes, a little bit of vanilla, and I'm going to go ahead and taste now. And this is where you start to get some of that oaky notes specifically. So the inside of a barrel is always going to be treated in some way. It's either heated, toasted, charred, and that actually releases oils that are present in the oak that create different types of vanilla flavor profiles, molasses, some of those caramelized notes that you get from a barrel. And this just tastes, it smells and tastes just like clovers and honey. It's amazing and delicious. I love this one, just neat or on the rocks. So that's how I would guide myself through probably a whiskey style spirit. This isn't technically a whiskey. And then if you want to get even further into the cereal section here, depending on the type of whiskey you're drinking, you can get to know some different types of rye notes that are going to be spicier. The barley is a little softer and subtle, where corn can be very sweet. So that's kind of a fun introduction to the flavor wheel and to how to pull out those types of tasting notes. Now we're going to move on to cocktail tools.
Sorry, Monica, we have a question about the tints.
Sure.
Flavor wheel. So do all spirits have a specific base scent? And like, for example, do whiskeys have the same base scent, or can a whiskey be different across the board?
That's a very good question. I personally believe that they can all be very different. If you're tasting some very similar styles of spirits, they might smell the same. But even getting into whiskeys, there are so many different types of whiskeys. A bourbon is a type of whiskey, a scotch, a rye, even a wheat whiskey. You can get 4 grain, you can get single malts. And those are all technically named based on what the spirit is distilled from. So a scotch is a type of whiskey that's made only in Scotland and tends to be dried out on smoked peat. So scotch is known for being very smoky. So you're going to smell campfire immediately when you smell a scotch. Whereas a rye tends to be spicier. And that's actually a very Maryland style spirit. Traditionally pre-prohibition, most people were making rye in this state because it was prominently grown here. So with a rye, you're going to smell more spice. Whiskeys specifically, you'll get a lot of oak on the nose because they're barrel aged. When you get into other types of spirits like gins or liqueurs, you're going to get a lot more complex, like herbal notes and tones. But the more you get familiar with smelling different types of things, the more you'll start to recognize those different notes. Good question. All right, now we're going to go ahead and move on to cocktails. I'm blocking your camera. Okay. Can you guys see this okay? See my bar? Actually, here, I'm going to back up. There There we go. Now you can see the bar better. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce a few cocktail tools so that you can understand what you can use at home that you might see fancy bartenders using, or you might see something in a recipe. This is something called a jigger. This is a measuring tool. Bartenders always measure in ounces. Jiggers can measure a ½ ounce, a ¼ ounce, 2 ounces, depending on what the measurement says on here. At home, if you have any sort of liquid measuring cup that you use for baking or for cooking with, that also has ounce measurements on it. So if you see cocktail recipes that call for a certain number of ounces, you can use that. You can also use tablespoons and teaspoons. All you have to do is just Google search, how many tablespoons does 1 ounce equal? And it'll tell you, and then you can kind of eyeball what you need to do. So you don't need one of these guys at home. The next thing I have is a swizzle spoon. This thing can work when you're stirring a drink just as any regular spoon does. If something calls for you to swizzle it, just turn a regular spoon upside down, or a fork or anything like that, and turn it like this in your drink. And that just stirs it in a specific way that gets the ice to chill the outside of the glass so that it's frosting. What do I have next? I've got my shaker. I just use at home a pint glass and a plastic cup instead of 2 different stainless steel shakers like you would at a bar. It works just as well. Your strainers. This is called a Hawthorne strainer. This is what you use when all you need to do is get the liquid out without ice chips falling into your drink. At home, you can use a spaghetti strainer. It's just as simple. If you see something that calls for something to be double strained, that means you're using a fine mesh strainer that looks like this, and your Hawthorne strainer, and you're straining it this way into your glass. And that's getting out like chunks, like if you have pieces of lemon left over from juice or something like that, so your cocktail's nice and clean. I'll use a coffee filter sometimes if I don't have one of these at home. What am I missing now? I think that's everything. Awesome. So we're gonna start with something simple first. I'm gonna do sort of a elevated style mule. Now, the typical Moscow mule is going to have vodka and ginger beer in it. However, today we're gonna make this a fun 10th Ward style drink. So let me grab a glass here. I like to add bitters to my mule because I think it adds a fun flavor note to your drink. It elevates it. It adds a little more complexity to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few dashes of orange bitters into this guy. We also carry these local bitters. These are the same guys that developed that spirit flavor wheel that I was talking about. I will take my springtime liqueur. This is a liqueur that we make that has natural ingredients that are seasonal to the current season right now. It's got chamomile in it. It's got something called sweet woodruff, cardamom. It's very floral and sweet and springy and grassy. The average cocktail that would be what we would call a highball cocktail, that's typically a spirit mixed with a soda or a juice or something like that, is always going to have 1.5 ounces of spirit in it, whereas a martini might have 2 ounces. It tends to be more spirit forward and a little stronger. So I'm putting 1.5 ounces in this guy. I am going to fill my glass with ice here. Ignore the Miller Lite pitcher, and I'm getting ice all over the place. And I'm going to top it with ginger beer, which we also carry locally. We also sell the mule kits at 10th Ward that you can get to go during COVID right now because we can't make them in-house. So this is ginger beer made here in Frederick County. It's very delicious. Has a wonderful spice flavor to it. And then we're going to garnish it with a lime. So before we get to drink this, I'm going to show you how we cut a lime. There are a couple different ways that you can cut limes. Wedges, typically for a drink like this, is something that I like to do because then you can actually squeeze the lime in it. So you can get a little bit of the lime taste to it. So we're going to set it upwards this way. Okay. You cut the lime so that you can actually set it on a glass for a friend of yours if you're hosting a party. You're going to cut it right down the middle, opposite from the kind of the grain that's here in the middle of the lime. You want to cut it all the way through just a little bit so it has a little line there for people to open their lime up and set it on the side of the drink. And then I'm going to cut it in 4 ways so that we've got the perfect wedge here. And there's your mule. Cheers. That's delicious. If you want to get fancier, you can do a half wheel where you just kind of cut it the opposite way down the middle. And you've got the wheel like this. Steve, do I have time to also make a martini for everybody, or should I move into questions?
Yeah, let's do one more drink.
One more drink? Awesome. You can do full wheels or half wheels of citrus. It just depends on how you're going. You can also just take an average like carrot peeler or something like that and peel a little bit of the peel off, rub it around the glass, and that just expresses the oils enough to also give you a really nice taste and aroma on your drink if you don't want all of the juice in it. Now the next thing we're gonna do is the gin martini, and I love my martinis dirty, so we're gonna do this with olive juice. We'll go ahead and do 2 ounces, which is typical for a martini or a Manhattan. So if you've ever been wondering why whenever you order a Manhattan at the bar, you're a lot drunker than you were when you were getting your mule, that's because they are stronger and they have more alcohol in them. So my 2 ounces is gonna go in here. Now you can get a dry martini where your bartender will probably spritz or rinse the glass with dry vermouth. If you're just at home, you're likely not going to have dry vermouth on hand. I personally don't typically notice a difference. I just like my martinis dirty, and I think the olive juice covers up enough of the vermouth that it's not really worth putting that in there. But if you prefer it less dirty and drier, I recommend getting a dry vermouth from your local liquor store. Vermouth is a wine though, and so it's not going to stay on your shelf very good if you open it and then let it sit for months. So that's something to think about if you want a more fresher flavor. The next thing you're going to want to do is you want to chill your martini glass. So it's nice and chill. You got filling it with ice and a little bit of water. We'll let that chill while we're mixing our drink. And we're gonna put some ice in our drink. Now, when you're doing dirty martini and you wanna add olive juice, it sort of depends on how dirty you like your drink to be. I usually recommend somewhere between a ½ ounce and an ounce of olive juice, depending on how dirty you like it. I'm gonna go ahead and do a whole ounce here. And if you just get regular green olives from the grocery store, it's gonna have the juice already in it, so you should be good to do both. Let me shake. So you see them about good there. Dump our chilled glass, and we strain. I can get this apart. All you need for this one is a Hawthorne strainer. What the shaking does is something called bruising, which is diluting it and chilling it at the same time. So that way you're not getting completely a straight spirit. For those that are James Bond fans that want the stirred version over the shaken version, that's gonna dilute it less, but still just chill it. So that's when you can instead just stir the ice with a spoon in your gin into a glass and then strain it into your martini glass. And then we'll garnish it with a couple olives and you've got a martini. And that's all just those are just 2 simple cocktails that I wanted to suggest to you guys to make at home. If you ever get a chance to visit us here at the Cocktail Lab, we do some fun, super elevated drinks. Our bartenders are awesome and they're super fun to watch. So hopefully we'll get to see you guys when this is all over. Want to do some questions?
Sure. If you guys have questions, feel free to type it into the box and we'll get them answered. We have a lot of people on the call, so don't want to unmute everybody. I'll start with the first question. This is a American blended whiskey that was probably sitting in my grandma's closet or cabinet for at least 20, 25 years. Does it go bad, or does it go bad after I open it, or does it enhance the flavor the longer it sits there?
Neither of those things will happen. It won't, once it's in a bottle, it's not going to really change in flavor. If it were still sitting on oak, it would, but the glass isn't going to impart any flavors in it. It won't go bad either. And that's because liquor is shelf stable, and we also have to follow very specific federal regulations. If you were to maybe have a Maryland style whiskey pre-prohibition, it might have gone bad because Maryland was known for sweeter whiskeys, and some distilleries would cheat and they would put things like prune juice in it to sweeten it a little bit. So if it happens to be a very old Maryland style bottle of whiskey, it could be rancid.
And is that just for whiskey, or do other alcohols potentially go bad, like a sherry, or I guess maybe something with more sugar in it?
Sure. None of them will ever go bad, but some certain types of spirits that may have had a natural infusion in them may, after a while, start to get a little bit muddier in flavor. Our liqueurs, for example, typically like they'll last forever, they're shelf stable forever, but in taste, it might not be as bright and complex because the natural ingredients that are in here, portions of them are still going to sit and continue to macerate and continue to infuse as it sits on the shelf.
Great. It looks like we have some questions about shipping. You ship?
I wish. We legally can't ship in the state of Maryland. There are actually only 6 states in the country that allow shipping, so we currently don't. We've been actually asking Governor Hogan to lift that ban during the emergency state so that we can, but nothing has happened yet. We can deliver.
Great. And what spirit was the one you used in the mule?
That was our springtime liqueur. So this is what I like to call the springtime mule. It's just going to be a lot more fun than your average mule that has vodka in it, but almost any spirit goes well with ginger beer. So you could do a gin mule, you could do a whiskey mule, which is what they call a Kentucky mule. I think it's a super versatile mixer.
Great. What's your best selling item?
Ooh. Probably 2 things. Our absinthe, which I don't have in front of you guys today, it's actually Maryland's first and only absinthe. And because there really isn't much absinthe produced in this region, it does really well. It's also just amazing. And it has a really fun story and a lot of mythologies to it. Also, anything that is seasonal or limited tends to be popular. So the springtime liqueur was released last month. The honey jack just came back, which is the one that we got to taste. Those are sort of going kind of back and forth with each other.
Great. And talking about delivery within Maryland, how would one go about getting their liquor delivered?
Yeah, I hate to say, because most terps probably aren't going to be all directly located in Frederick County, but we do have a 10-mile radius right now. I've made a few exceptions to some people in Montgomery County who have rallied a bunch of neighbors together and created very large orders. So please shoot me an email if you want to kind of pool together, and I'll drive out that way. But you can go to our website. And you can order through our site. We have a storefront there. We've also transitioned to offer curbside pickup. So if you do want to drive out here, you can just call and they'll bring it right out to your car.
Great. And I'll put it in the chat box here, but what is the best email for someone to reach you if they do pull their neighbors together?
Monica at 10thwarddistilling.com. And I did also want to briefly mention something that we've been doing in response to COVID. We've also transitioned a portion of our efforts to making surface disinfectant to those in need. We've gotten a lot of requests for hand sanitizer and disinfectant and those types of things. So we've been glad that we've been able to give back to the community and donate to hospitals and nursing homes and fire departments and other frontline businesses.
Great. And for our out-of-state guests that can't get the liquor delivered, what do you recommend as a substitute for the springtime liquor?
That's a really good question. I would look for any type of very floral style liqueur. Chartreuse might be close to it in color and taste.
Great. And are your spirits available anywhere else outside of Frederick? Any liquor stores?
Yeah, you guys can go to our website. There's a section that under our spirits page that says where to buy. And that lists all of the liquor stores and bars and restaurants that carry us. We distribute throughout the state of Maryland and DC.
Great. And do you still have your holiday liquor? Is that still available?
Oh, we've got some 10th Ward fans here. That's a good question. I do actually still have a few bottles of holiday liqueur left. You'll have to shoot me an email to ask about it because I'm not sure if it's on the site since it's out of season, but I've got about 2 cases left in the back that we were going to save for next year. So I'm happy to sell that if somebody's interested because that's one of my favorites.
Great. We have a question about your event space. As an off-premise caterer, do you have a vendor list that someone could join?
Yes, our events manager has a whole booklet of recommended vendors that we work well with. People can bring in any of their own caterers if they want. So for those that aren't aware, we offer weddings. We have a beautiful event space upstairs for wedding services, private events, nonprofit events, and Amanda, our events manager, I think her contact info is also on the website. Her email address, amanda@10thwarddistilling.com. You have that whole packet and list.
Great. Are most of your orders now with COVID, are most of them online and pickup, or mostly just stop by the store and yell in the window and what you have available?
Yeah, it's been a healthy mix of everything, actually. It's nice to see people that come by and pick up. We have a table blocking our door out front, so nobody comes in. We can kind of hand it to you with a nice, safe barrier. The funny thing about the laws being lifted is that I think a lot of people have been sort of taking their own initiative, and then I'll see people walk away with their to-go cocktail and starting to drink it, and we have to remind them that it means that you have to take it home with you. So that's been pretty fun. But yeah, it's been a mix of everything.
Great. And a Maryland-related question: is there anything you took away or learned, or you were appreciative that you took from going to Maryland to what you're doing now?
Absolutely. A mix of, so my background was in environmental science and sustainability. So I brought a lot of that skill set through with me into what we do. We source all of our raw materials from within about 30 miles from the distillery. So there's a farm out in West Virginia. Our farmer Rusty and his wife Cricket, they're super adorable, grow all of our grain for our whiskeys. We also source some other local manufacturers for some of our other types of spirits. So that's where sort of some of the like technical side of things came from, and the education helped me in that aspect. And then, like I said in the beginning, I bartended at Cornerstone. So that's where I actually started in the alcohol industry, which is funny because I was slinging Bud Lights and Jaeger bombs before I started doing this.
Great. Do we have any other questions from our audience? We have a.
How have you guys been doing? I'm curious to know. Is everybody okay and safe and healthy and sane?
I'm wondering. I'm wondering if people on the call have found themselves ordering. I won't say drinking, but at least ordering more alcohol during all of this.
Yes, from what I understand, our liquor store accounts have been doing very well. And we've done a lot more like retail bottle sales than we normally do in an average week because we'd normally be doing cocktails here. So it's been cool to see people, regulars calling in and asking for recipes and stuff.
Right? Would you say, I guess overall maybe business isn't going as well if things are not normally operating, but given everything, are sales what you would expect for this time of year?
No, we're actually down in sales a lot. Even with retail, unfortunately, we're at about, I'd say 10 to 20% on average, what we would normally do in a month. That's because nobody's really booking weddings and events right now. We don't have the cocktail business. A lot of our wholesale accounts have slowed down in ordering, but we have been very fortunate enough to get a lot of the financial aid and relief that has been put out there. I understand a lot of other small businesses have been struggling getting attention from those grants and loans, but we've been fortunate enough to get the money that we've needed to keep the lights on and keep paying our staff.
Great. And how many staff do you have?
Normally we have 12. Right now we're operating with about 6. The other 6 are all part-time bar staff that tend to have other full-time jobs or they're stay-at-home moms. Some of them are caring for family members that have compromised immune systems. So the other 6 staff actually volunteered to not work and not take shifts so they did not have to risk exposing themselves and so they could give up their shifts to the full-time employees that needed it. We're super lucky in that aspect. So our payroll expenses have actually been cut in half right now.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that that's the case for everybody. So I'm fortunate for that.
Great.
Yeah.
Have you had a lot of drive up business, or has it been mostly delivery?
I would say we probably do more curbside pickups than we do deliveries. I think it's because people just need to get out of their house for a little bit. Otherwise, they'll start to go crazy. But it's kind of fun. It's a style of business I never thought that we'd be doing. And we've been adaptive. Every week we try something out to see what works. And whenever we introduce something new, people get excited about it. So that's been helping sales a little bit. You know, we might introduce a new to-go cocktail of the week or release a new product. And that helps keep it from being stagnant.
Great. Any new inventions in terms of the cocktail of the week?
I can tell you, I'm not sure when we're going to release it. It depends on, well, actually, there will be a Honey Jack cocktail coming out this weekend when Honey Jack releases on Saturday. But after that, we're doing a iced coffee Samoa, as in the Girl Scout cookie Samoa style cocktail with a Samoa simple syrup in the iced coffee drink. So that might be a little surprise release in the next week or two. You guys will see if you follow us on Facebook. Everybody's excited about that one.
Great. Any last questions for Monica? All right. I don't see anything coming through right now, but I want to thank you for taking the time and speaking with us and teaching us a little bit, and also letting us know how things are going from your viewpoint as an alum and a business owner. So I think that was very, very insightful.
Well, thank you guys. Seriously, I appreciate all the support, all of the like posts people have been sharing. I can feel it from my alum friends. And please reach out to me if there's anything I can do to support you too. I'd love to be there for as many of our fellow Terps as I can be.
Yeah, I'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone that attended. It will have your website, your information. So if people have other questions or want to order from you, I'll have all the information in an email.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve, for setting this all up.
Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And
Bye, everybody. Cheers. Mute myself.